So I'm here with another guest, one of my mentors, Dr. Ken Druck, and really excited for this interview on another interview for getting through the holidays after loss, which can be really difficult, especially if it's recent or new, but it can also be difficult if it's been a long period of time. So, Dr. Ken Druck is a highly sought after speaker, best-selling author, and coach consultant known for his expertise in turning adversity into opportunity. Ken's dedicated his career to helping individuals, families, and organizations to go on after difficult challenges, such as loss, aging, downturns, and setbacks. He's also been on the ground helping families in big national tragedies like 9/11, Boston bombings, and the Sandy Hook shootings. And you can find more about Ken at kendruck.com. And he has a new best-selling book that's amazing. It's on grief and loss called How We Go On. And it's around self-compassion, courage, and gratitude on the path forward. So it can be really useful and helpful, especially now with getting through the holidays after loss. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me again, Ken.
Thanks for inviting me, Josh. And it's such an exciting time, with the release of Gifts of Grief. I just want to join you in that moment of celebration. But there are mixed feelings because I know that there are people watching right now or who are going to be sharing this with people that they love who are suffering through the holidays, maybe for the first time, as you said. Maybe it's just for reasons that we don't even understand. It's a time of loss, and maybe it's because somebody has passed, somebody has died that we love, or maybe it's because we're in the middle of a time, a horrible time of our lives where we're spending our first holiday season without a partner that we've been in a relationship with. We just got a bad diagnosis. We got our annual physical. We were so excited to find out where things were great and wonderful, and they aren't. Or one of our kids is suffering, or a brother, a sister is in a terrible way in their life. So, for whatever reason, this is a difficult and challenging time. It's also so important not just to kick up our heels and celebrate, because this is supposed to be a time of gathering with the people we love, of kicking up our heels, you know, feeling gratitude over all the blessings and gifts and wonderful things in our lives. But predictably, it's going to be the most difficult time of year, and we're also opening our arms to the people who are going through that, and we're going to make some suggestions that hopefully help them get through this time. And let's start by reimagining January 1st. All the holidays are over, and you took care of yourself. And matter of fact, you've taken better care of yourself than you ever imagined you could. And you've said yes to the things that were good to say yes to, and no to the things that were so smart to stay back from. And you're in good shape to begin this year of renewal or resilience or whatever it is, new beginnings, or of grieving with integrity, which is what Gifts of Grief is all about. It's of going through that, being that work in progress that happens, whose heart happens to be immeasurably heavy. So I'm excited to be with you. And I see that cat in the background.
Yeah.
I should bring my dog into just to even things out here, except dogs and cats.
Yeah, they've actually been some of my deep healing
Yeah.
journeys, just having life around me. And it really shifted my door when I was just a single guy alone, and versus
Yeah.
cats and life and somebody to take care of. And so the animals have been a huge support with me. So she jumps in. I have a couple of them. They may jump in and out at times during this.
I've got to spontaneously show you something and
Yeah.
your audience something. So this has directly to do with grief and loss, because our beautiful and some of the people watching may have just suffered the loss of a treasured pet.
Mm,
So after we lost our dog Bean, somebody called from one of the rescues locally and said, "Hey, we know you're grieving, but we have this very special dog, and would you be interested in meeting him?" And so we got him, but we got this beautiful, what do we do when somebody suffered a loss?
mm,
We got this beautiful cup from a friend.
mm.
It showed Bean on the side with the halo, and our new dog Jack, and me and Lisette, and there's the Rainbow Bridge. But isn't that beautiful? Isn't
So
that
beautiful.
isn't that
So
just a
beautiful.
beautiful way? So I thought I'd share that with your audience. It's just, the question of what do we do if somebody we love is going through, a loss? How do we show up? What do we do and what don't we do?
Mm.
And that's an important conversation too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one because it also helps if somebody is in loss, gives them more awareness to why they may be rejecting some people's where they see they're trying to help, but they don't want any of it. So both the person that's grieving to have more awareness and somebody that's listening that wants to know what they can do to support. That sounds like a great place to start knowing what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. And by the way, don't worry if you're listening and you want to write these things down. No, you don't need to. They're all in the How We Go On book, and they're also on my website, which for free. So, the first thing I'll say is that when we suffer a loss, because we don't live in a grief literate world, we don't live in a world that really knows how to, we live in a figure it out and fix it mode. We don't know how to really be with people because we can't fix it. We can't undo it. There's no cure when our heart is broken because we're suffering a loss and going through a period of loss. So what people feel often is not only have they lost a loved one or their marriage is over or their job, their career, or they're retiring, or they're realizing they just turned 70 or 80 and their life is winding down. It's not just that, but they feel like they're losing the world, not just a loved one, but the world, because the world doesn't get it. The world doesn't have a clue how to, what I need, or doesn't want to listen to or really understand how alone I feel, or how broken I feel, or how uncertain I am about how can I possibly go on from here? How can life just simply go on? What am I supposed to do? So we're lost, and understandably so, but we're not finding the comfort. And I think one of the beautiful things about gifts of grief is it shows what to do, how we show up for each other, how we show up for ourselves. It lays it all out, the template for what it means. And that often, when we break those do's and don'ts into words, it often means, that letting somebody know who is suffering a loss that I can't possibly understand. Josh, I've never lost a brother. I've never lost a loved one to substance. I can't possibly understand um, what this must have been like for you, and what must be involved in your healing over the years, and rising up, to create this beautiful film, and rising up in a way that honors your brother. So, I think the first do is to realize we don't really know until we've made it safe for somebody to really explain to us, because we're not running out the door trying to fix them or tell them what to do. That's on the don't list. We're not changing the subject or telling them, "Oh my God, I know just how you feel. I lost my dog last year, or my grandmother died," or something. That the do list is to listen without giving advice, without unsolicited advice, and to ask open-ended questions, not questions with a message. Now, some of us, and we talked about this at the premiere, some of us don't know we're doing it, but we're asking a question that's really has a hidden message in it. Like when people ask me, well, do you have any other children? What's the hidden message in that? Well, if you have another child, why are you so sad? You got another one at home. Why isn't isn't that going to make you feel better? What's wrong with you? You're not feeling better about anything. Well, yeah, I've suffered a loss. My heart is broken. I'm not thinking about all the ways I can boost myself up and be buoyant. Right now, it feels like I'm sinking. So I think the first thing is to truly be empathetic with people you love. And if it's you that's going through loss, it's a moment of opportunity to show yourself a level of self compassion that you've never, and kindness and patience and support and encouragement and faith, and to quiet all those self critical, pressure, impatient messages that sometimes we don't even know we've gotten into the habit of giving ourselves. But to quiet those things and to take that hand down from our throat, move it down to our heart, where we give ourselves an understanding and patience and the belief that somehow I'm going to find my way through this. I'm going to be able to turn this page in my life. I may always have a hole in my heart. I may always suffer this loss to some degree, but I'm going to live the rest of whatever days I have in a way that honors the person I've lost, that honors the life that I've been given, and the opportunities that still are there for me to find my way back to joy, to find my way to some semblance of peace and of meaning again. And that's what's there for us. But if it happens when we organically, when we learn to keep our hand on our heart with self-compassion. So I'd say on the top of the do's and don'ts list, the do is keep your hand on your heart, treat yourself with kindness and patience. And if you're supporting somebody who has suffered a loss, who's really hurting and really lost about how to go on, then show them every compassion, every patience, every kindness. Don't get into the figure it out and fix mode. Get into the be with them mode. Walk with them, stand with them, ask them open ended questions and not questions loaded with a message. Oh, or with a fix, a suggested fix.
Yeah, I'd say that's where people really, really need some help around it, because so often people lean in to relate or to try to take people out of their pain when you're just,
Yeah,
and there is no fix. And so learning to just be there with people is what we need the most. It seems like it's just, oh, be with me. Like you
yeah,
said, be with me, walk with me, love on me, listen to me, ask me questions, like let me feel safe enough to share with you, to reveal my heart, and being my experience with me, because I can't relate in that moment. I'm lost in it.
yeah.
So
And if
so
you can't do that, if this is, then own up to it. I had one of the most honorable things anybody did with me after my daughter Jenna died and she died suddenly and tragically, and it was on CNN and blah, blah, blah. But he came up to me 2 years. This is one of my guy I thought was a buddy. He came up to me 2 years after Jenna died. And he said, I've seen you on the street in town. I've avoided talking with you. I feel ashamed and embarrassed, but I almost felt like I didn't know what I would say to you. There's nothing I could say to you to comfort you. I felt so inept. I felt like I couldn't really be a friend. So what did I do? I disappeared. I went missing. And I've avoided you for a couple of years. And I am so sorry.
mm,
And I've thought so hard and I've read and I've really tried to understand what, because I'm a father too, what a person might be going through. after the loss of a 21-year-old daughter. And so that's why I'm coming up to you today. And I said, you have no idea what a gift you've given to me.
Mm.
You have no idea what a gift this is. For you to be so honorable and honest. I said, it might have been me if it, God forbid it had been you who had lost a daughter. I might have felt the same helplessness, the same unknowingness about what to say or to do. Uh, I can't imagine that I wouldn't have also felt that way. But I feel so grateful that you've stepped forward and you're giving me a hug right now when you're able to. You gave yourself the time you needed to be able to say and do this. And so it's okay to step back if we're being triggered, if it's triggering a loss in us or a fear in us or an unknowingness in us about how to show up. It's okay to step back, but be honest with the person that's grieving, because they may be feeling like, not only have I lost the world, including some of my closest buddies, some of the people that I would have told you were my closest friends have gone missing, but show up to say, hey, I love you, I'm thinking about you. I don't know what I could possibly say or do to be helpful. And so if you feel like I've stepped back, I have. And I'm sorry. And there will be a time where I really want to be there for you. But in the meantime, I really want to let you know I love you, and my heart is with you and the family.
I,
That's okay.
what I love so much about that is I know when I went through my brother, just like you said, there were some of my closest friends who I think showed up for a minute and was like in and out. And then I felt a little dropped by it because there never was a completion conversation. And so I think what I'm hearing as you're sharing is the ownership of like, oh, this happened, and acknowledging that and letting him know that he was hurting for you, and that he didn't know what to do. But the coming back and acknowledging that reconnected the friendship and
Yeah.
allowed you to feel like, oh, okay, he didn't drop me. He just didn't know how to deal with the grief either, which allowed that compassion to bubble up. So I really love that because it gives people, I think they just don't know what to do. And then they go on with life years later acting like nothing happened versus a conversation can be so healing. And whenever you do it, right? Even if it's years later. But I think that's a really, really supportive thing that can be done to reconnect the friendship.
Yeah.
Um,
After 9/11, I was asked so many times, because I helped coordinate the bereavement after 9/11, what what did people teach you and tell you was the most important thing that somebody said to them that gave them a feeling they weren't alone, that showed them compassion, support, understanding, and love. And it was simply telling people, I'm so sorry,
mm,
and really meaning it. Not the social, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. But the true, the sincere, I'm so sorry.
so
We have,
sorry for their loss, or so
I'm so
sorry.
sorry for your loss.
Mm,
There's a saying we adopted at the Jenna Druck Center, that compassion is your pain in my heart.
mm.
That I'm allowing myself to feel what you must be feeling. It's your pain, your sorrow. I've allowed it into my own heart. And I'm allowing empathy, even though it's painful for me to feel what you must be going through or what you've gone through. But I'm allowing it in service to my love and support for you. And it's also true with joy. You know, true friendship is your joy in my heart. It's not me being jealous or, like, what the hell did he do? Or, it's, here you are, Josh. You're going through a wave of tremendous recognition, well-deserved recognition and notoriety for gifts of grief, and great things have yet to even happen and come. By the way, that's my dog whining. You want to come over here and say hello? Come here. Come here. Come here. Oh, you just want to stay there and whine. Okay.
I'm glad
So,
he's here too.
so there are people that will go missing in your moment of glory.
It's
know?
there's
And
also been
go,
that too.
what? Aren't
Yeah.
aren't you supposed to be here cheering me on? You're somebody who's witnessed this journey that I've been on and all of its pain. And now it's a moment of glory and honoring and celebrating and rising up above, reaching to new heights and sharing what I've learned with the world. Please don't disappear in this moment of glory for me. So friendship, true friendship and loving a relationship means also your joy in my heart.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because I have had moments of grief amidst this of that experience. Like, wow, I because it's been this whole journey of some excitement and joy to share, and then also some deep moments of grief. And I think you just sharing that helped bring awareness to what that was. It was like, oh, where'd you go? Some really close friends that just didn't show up or didn't even say a word or didn't even watch, or I was just kind of like, what happened there? And so
Yeah.
thank you for that. That's like
Yeah,
there's
what's
a
that about? Yeah.
yeah, it's like
So
what?
it's
You know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But if somebody said to you, walked up to you, I bet it would be a win-win for somebody to walk up and say, I love what you've done. I'm so excited about your success, but there's a part of me,
Mm,
kind of the shadow side of me,
mm,
that is jealous
mm,
or wonders why, I've been doing something, I've been working so hard. How come I'm not getting some glory? How
mm.
come my book didn't, my did become a film or my film didn't rise to this level? So whether it's jealousy that's been hidden, denied, repressed, that's coming out in the form of distancing,
Mm.
pushing you away, or not sharing in your moments of celebration and triumph, whatever it is. If somebody came up to you, I bet, and shared that and say, I'm embarrassed, I'm a little ashamed, but I love you, and I'm always going to be truthful with you, that it's been a little threatening.
Mhm.
Your success has been a little unnerving to me. If somebody said that, you would feel met and loved and honored by their
Deeply.
honesty.
Yeah, deeply, deeply. And I think that's why I love this because I really believe grief is the fundamental challenge in our world that is just so unknown. And unless you've been in it for a long period of time, most people are running from it. And I really believe it just shows in this little micro moment of like
Yeah,
everything's tied to grief. And my guess would be underneath that individual, there's
yeah,
some grief somewhere within them that
yeah,
they haven't quite felt. So they can't be there in those moments. And so it's I think really getting if somebody's listening to this and they're going through grief and it's their first time or it's their fifth time, and they're in it, there's some hope in knowing, at least for me, that I'm learning how to be there deeper with other people and in a way that I think you can't be unless you've been through it. It's almost like it rips you. I remember writing a quote at one time. It grief sculpts your soul and crafts your character. And I remember it's just like because it's a tearing that almost forces you to become this new version that you're different. And in that difference, some of the gifts or the benefits of it is you can really be there with other people when most people can't. And so somebody that's going through it right now, going, I'm in the depths of hell, um, um, knowing that on the other path of that, you can now be there with people when they're in the depths of hell very differently. And it's such a bright light when you're in it because very few people can. I remember there's one buddy of mine, Fritz, who showed up when I was in it, and he just showed up at the house and he's like, I'm just here. And he didn't
I'm
say anything,
here.
he didn't try to fix it. He just was like, I'm here with you for the week. And I remember in the moment I was like, I want to be alone. But with him there, I couldn't be alone. And it actually was so healing for my heart just to have somebody with me. And so one other, just as it's coming up, one other thing I've learned to that's been really helpful to do is just to send food. Like I learned to kind of now they have all these food delivery. So one thing I've done is when somebody passes is just say, hey, what kind of foods do you like? What kind of foods do you not like? And just send a food delivery for a week or 14
It's
days.
beautiful.
And the food shows up, and because you can't really think right after to even get through the day of making food. But I want to go a little bit deeper. I know you also
Yeah.
have these honorings, and they're so important. And for somebody in grief, sometimes we can't function, we can't get off the couch. We're moving through slow like molasses through the world. But
Yep.
I have found by looking at the grief as sacred, sometimes we have the energy to get into an honoring and this almost burst of energy, which is the last, decade of my film, which was for me. But it's like Ken has these honorings that you can do that really allow you to find some strength, some courage, some power in the midst of hell, if you will,
Yep.
that make
Yep.
it easier to get some energy. So I think that would be helpful for people listening, to
Yeah.
learn a little bit more about those.
I think there are many paths that we can take. We don't get to play God. We don't get to play control the universe. We suffer losses. Your brother died. It's hard. It's tragic. You've had to live out, as your parents have, this life without the gift of what it would mean to have a brother. Just as my daughter, Steffi, has had to go through this life without the gift. We all cried at her wedding. We, when her kids were born, I mean, we light candles at all the moments of joy to acknowledge that empty place at the table. But it hurts. And somehow sometimes we look up, we look for the casting director and say, how does this make sense? Tell me how it makes sense that I don't get to have my brother here with me and through these chapters of life. Somebody who grew up in the same house, knew how dorky my parents were, went through all the things that kids go through growing up together, just as my daughter goes through, and similarly, parents. And we we go through this, and we don't really know, what does it mean? What would it mean for me to take care of myself? How do I take care of myself in this loss? Well, I've got choices. I could make my pain the central organizing principle of my life, my despair. It's real, it's understandable, it's justifiable. Or I can make my love the central organizing principle of my life and walk the path of honor, live by a code of honor. Maya Angelou said many years ago that courage was part of all of the life's greatest virtues.
Hmm.
Courage was in the mix of all. Well, I think honor is in the mix of all of life's griefs, including the grief that we go through, you mentioned before, where sometimes we're met by the greatest opportunity of our life. We meet the person of our dreams, we get the job of our dreams. Something that we worked hard on become blossoms into a gift like yours has. And in those moments of opportunity, we suffer a loss. The loss of our life that was relatively peaceful and uncomplicated. Those days are gone for a while. We're grieving the loss of, a day where the phone didn't ring 20 times,
Hmm.
where we weren't under the pressure of what's next, what's next, what's next. My book just came out, my film just came out, my documentary just came out, my kid was just born. So at moments of opportunity too, but here we are. What does it mean to honor? And all of us answer that differently. For me, it starts with the first honoring is after a loss to survive their death, to do everything in our power to take care of ourselves and survive. Because in the beginning of a loss, especially a traumatic and sudden loss, it's the equivalent of being in the ICU. You can't see somebody suffering, their grief suffering. It's not necessarily that you can look into their eyes and see it if you look carefully enough. But we're dying inside. We've had a huge hole ripped in our heart. And we're still, if it's years ago, we're still walking with a limp in our heart. So how do you do it? You take care of yourself. you say no to things, and this is true of what we're going through the holidays right now. There are certain things that wouldn't be really good for me to do. They're not really things that are going to nourish me. Yeah, it's oh, I should go to the holiday party, or I should have people, I should, take the time it's good to write a card to everybody. But you know what? It's not what's best for me right now. So doing what's best for me, especially if I'm a pleaser, I'm the person who's lived for other people's approval. And if I'm living by those measures, it's going to be even harder. But but it's not what's best for me. And I don't have the luxury of doing it right now. So I think the first honoring is self-care. It's to survive their death. The second honoring, I think, is to begin to cultivate a spiritual relationship with our loved ones, because there's a love that never dies. It's embodied in every minute of your documentary. The love that never dies is there. Your love for your brother is just oozing out of this incredible documentary. My world and my life has been an expression of my love for my daughters. The love that never dies gets cultivated. And that doesn't mean that I've figured out the secrets and how this all works, this thing called life, or this universe that I'm in, or universes. It doesn't mean that I've figured it all out. It just means that I have I've made the decision to cultivate, to keep saying I love yous, to keep feeling the I love yous that would be spoken to me. My hope and prayer for you has been that while all this is going on, you can hear your brother's I love yous and thank yous. So I feel sometimes, or I feel my daughter, her presence, sometimes her love you is, Dad, you're not going to wear that shirt, or I hate that hat, or, whatever, whatever she used to say, that I feel like she still is kind of watching over and has my back, even if I'm imagining it, because I don't know where that comes from, how that arises up in me. So that's one of the other honorings, is to cultivate a spiritual relation, give ourselves permission, even though it's an act of faith and wishfulness that we can't prove with 100% certainty, to still keep expressing the love, as though maybe there's some way my I love you will travel. There's a spiritual realm in which, I call it spiritual, it could be, call it anything. There's a realm in which my love reaches its destination, which is my daughter's heart. The third, another one of the honorings, is to do something good in their name, to allow some of the beauty of their soul, of what was so good and precious and pure in their soul, to do something that's an expression of that. For me, it was starting a nonprofit foundation for my daughter in her name to help other families who'd lost a child. And we ended up, getting the Distinguished Contribution in Psychology Award for the work that we did over 20 years. So do something good in their name could be as simple as lighting a candle. It could be something as simple as telling them you love them. It could be showing a kindness to somebody that they cared about, or forgiving them, to making peace somewhere that would please them to know that you made peace. And I call that taking the high road. That's another one of the honorings. It's taking the high road, because in the rawness of grief, sometimes we feel, in the rawness of grief, we're so sensitive, we're hypersensitive, we want to bite people's noses off. I had a young woman tell me in a supermarket after Jenna died, "Oh, have a nice day." And what did I say? I bit her nose off. I said, "Oh, I'm sure I'll have a nice day. My daughter just died." Taking the high road means you understand that you are raw, that you're impatient, that your heart is broken, that you're hypersensitive. that you're not very tolerant and you can't stand the fact that the world is so insensitive or uneducated about grief, and you bite people's noses off. I went back and apologized to that young woman.
Mm.
That was my taking the high road. And I think we need to be aware that we probably have been insensitive to other people that were going through losses. And now if somebody is rude to me, instead of invoking the New Yorker in me, when I grew up in New York, it's like, what the hell, and I jump back and bite somebody's head off. Instead of invoking the New Yorker in me, I'll sometimes ask somebody, you having a hard day?
Mm.
Because sometimes the people that show you rudeness or impatience or insensitive or oblivious are grieving. And 9 out of 10 times, somebody will tell me, yeah, I'm having a hard day. And they'll tell me the story of what's happening in their hard day. Another one of the honorings is that we honor them by, and I said before, taking our foot off of our throat and showing ourselves kindness. And they're jumping up and down cheering. They would be cheering us, saying, I'm so glad you're learning how to be self compassionate. I'm so glad you're losing all this self criticism, self condemnation, guilt, all this guilt that you've been carrying around. You've been living in that torture chamber of guilt. So I think that's another one. And people can decide all, you as you're listening to this, if you're listening to this and saying, what are the ways that I would be honoring the person I've lost or honoring what I've gone through? One of the ways I ask people to honor the relationship that they're going through a divorce, I say sit down and write down two blank pages. One of them 1 to 25, saying all the excuse me FUs that they want to say to the person they're getting a divorce from, to get all the anger purged, all the that time you did this, and if because you weren't more of that, and get it out. Don't use the rest of your life as a stage to express it towards your ex. Let's clean it up. And the second thing is to have a blank page 1 to 25 with something that's even harder than the FUs. And those are the thank yous. Find gratitude for 25 things that your partner did. It could be started with something as simple as, hey, we had a kid. Thank you for gifting me with a child. It took two of us. Thank you for the time you said this to me or you supported me when I was going through this. Thank you for the trust you showed me in even agreeing to be my partner. Thank you for all the good times we had together. Thank you for the time you apologize. It could be anything, but find it within you to clean things up and to clear the path forward. After one of my clients went through a horrible stage with their ex. Their ex was trying to kill them. They were just anything they could do to make their life miserable. I wrote an article called Exes Who Punish.
Mm.
The best way you punish is you put the kids in the crossfire. That's sacrilege to do that to children. So if you're watching this and one of the losses you've suffered is the loss of a relationship, constructive expression of your grief and your sorrow, give it constructive expression. Allow yourself to be angry, allow yourself to be sad, allow yourself, even if you've been apart from them, to know that there's a part of your heart that will always be grateful to them. That will always have a place, even though the relationship has ended as what it was. And that opens the door to a positive future. You're not going to be punishing a new person for your ex-wife's or ex-husband's crimes. You're clearing that path forward. So those are some of the things you can do. And honoring, if you're living a path of honor, you're living in a path of integrity. You're living in the virtues. You're living courageously. you're living honestly, and you're holding yourself accountable. You're allowing yourself to correct, to learn, to grow, to ripen as a human being, rather than getting stuck somewhere. And that's, what we want to do with our grief from whatever loss.
So powerful. I love those honorings because I think in it, it gives somebody to find where they're at and what they need to pull from in the moment, in this moment, that can get them into either movement, a practice,
Yeah.
compassion, something to move forward in. So it's so helpful. Um, I wanted to just
Yeah.
before we start to wrap this up, ask you another question because I'm finding there's a lot of people in the grief space or in the death doula space or that are drawn to this film and this work. And you spent many years in this space. And it's oftentimes not the sexiest space because people run from grief and death and loss. They run from aging, like a lot of the niches that you've been able to take grief and help people experience.
Yeah.
um,
Aging is grieving the loss of our younger self,
Yeah, yeah. So, but people,
our past.
again, they run from it, and so you've gone into these areas where most people are running from or running away from. I'm really curious what has either given you the courage, because to me it's so courageous to spend your life in this work and spend your life in national tragedies helping families on the ground. And so just curious what's allowed you to stay in this space or continue to lean into this space for your life when it's so challenging, so courageous, and most people are running the other direction and you run into it. Curious what's allowed you to stand in that with so much grace and humility and compassion.
Thank you. I consider you to be one of those people as well,
Hmm.
Josh. In different times in your life, you're just wired like I am to go into the fire. It's, oh, something's on fire. Let me go in and see who I can save and what we can salvage. Um, I think I'm wired that way.
Hmm.
I come from, I'm named for my uncle Casil,
Hmm.
who was an attorney in Austria, who was one of the first Jews in Europe to speak out against Hitler
Hmm.
and who was murdered by Hitler for speaking out and telling the truth. He's actually killed and buried in a mass grave near Kiev
Hmm.
in Ukraine right now. All those border lines have moved. And so I come from a family of of I of courageous people who endured the Holocaust, who
Hmm.
somehow have risen from the Holocaust. Some of them in good ways, some of them in not so good ways, but have done their best to rise from some the attempt to obliterate them. And I think I stand to some degree on their shoulders. When my daughter died, my uncle wrote me a letter talking about how they all survived the death in concentration camps, murdered, in displacement. They had to run for their lives. Many of them came to this country. And he reminded me of what true resilience is, what it truly means to rise. And the first thing he said that I find to be so true is that we have to be honest about our brokenness. And you and I have talked about this because if we're true, if we're honest and true to ourselves about our brokenness, instead of being ashamed that we walk with a limp in our heart, we rise up. We're proud, and our brokenness and the way we allow it and support it and try to heal it and speak to it and understand its existence in us. It's the one of the greatest parts of our wholeness is
Hmm.
that honesty and that integrity. And it's the same with fear. I'm fearful like everybody else, but it's when we put that fear on the tip of our sword and we meet that moment and we understand and we're honest with ourselves about what we're fearing. A lot of people spend the rest of their lives, the last third of their lives, dreading aging and fearing death. It's like, come on, we can do better than that. We're on a lease deal. Let's find some measure of peace in the fact that this life as we know it ends. Let's find faith in what we believe or imagine might be happen after we die. If that gives us comfort and understanding, let's search for understandings. Um, let's summon newfound courage in every season of life, because every season produces new changes, challenges, and opportunities. So I think it's the way I'm wired, and it's the way I've survived, is to immerse myself in whatever the greatest challenge of that moment of my life or that season of my life has presented me.
Mm.
As you have, my brother,
Well,
as
yeah,
you
well, when you've been a mentor through me since I started this journey back in 2014, and I remember that was one of the things that helped because I'd lean in and I'd make some progress, and then I'd get overwhelmed and take a step out and go in a different direction for a little while, and then I would lean back in again. And I remember sitting with you one day on your porch and being like, how do I do this? And kind of back to the same torture chamber. I'm trying to get this honoring done, yet I'm failing at it, or feeling like I'm failing, or it's harder for me to make progress. And I remember you said, like, if this is your life's work, like this is your life, you have a lifetime. So be patient with yourself. And it really allowed me to like relax into just continuing to pick it up when I had energy and move forward. And then when I got stuck or heavy, or I'd put it on the shelf, and then I'd come back and run it further and then put it on the shelf. And it just allowed me to keep moving forward and allow myself breaks when I needed to take a break. And that's even what I'm in now. I'm in a period of like doing a lot of deep work with men, offloading grief and first responders. And I'm still doing some first responder work, but I'm even with the men. I was like, this chapter needs to be closed for a little while. And so it's given me so much grace to actually shift in and out of identities,
yeah,
like kind of move in and out of. So I think if anybody's listening that's a death doula and feels like that season's ending, or you need a break, or you're in the grief and loss space, like Ken and I've been, and you need a little break or something, it just gives permission. It's given me so much permission to be like, oh, what's alive for me now? And allow that to move. And so thank you so much for that wisdom, that support. Um, I'm just really grateful because it's allowed me to continue to lean in. And I really love what you said. I think that's one of the things I stand for, is like owning the brokenness. Like instead of shying away from it or hiding with it or trying to fall in the background, like using it as a badge of honor, of
yes,
like, I'm proud of this and this is who I am. And you give other people permission to also do the same when we do it. And so you've been a mentor for me. And with that standing on your shoulders, now I think I'm giving other people permission to do the same. And
you
so
are. And it's
just,
so needed, Josh. The culture of men,
mm,
especially, I mean, women too, of course, but the culture of men
mm,
has actually taken steps
mm,
backwards. And we're reverting to the old definition of courage, which is power over
mm,
rather than power with. And it's power over things inside of ourselves too. It's not just other people.
mm,
It's obliterating the permission to be a human being and to take honest ownership of our fears, our insecurities, our unknowingness, our lostness, and to flip it and turn it as you are.
mm,
To flip, oh, it's like, what's wrong with me? I'm not keeping up with, I should be keeping up with it, the pressure that we live with. Instead, to say, what am I trying to say to myself here?
mm,
Uh, Is the positive, when I put my hand on my heart, am I trying to say to myself, hey, it's okay to take a break? It's okay to come up for air. It's okay to reflect for a while about what's going to make my heart sing.
mm,
How do I balance my life right now with the best, with what really matters? How do I take this period as I'm hoping people go through the holidays, and January 1st or the first week of January, they say to themselves, boy, did I do well. I really took such good care of myself through the holidays. I did, maybe a couple of times I went overboard. I thought I could do more than was really good for me, but I did so well. I'm so proud of myself. I'm ready to start the new year. I'm
Mm.
ready to push the reset button. You know, so I'm hoping that we can do that as men. We can learn how to do that through every season, every turn in the road, every change, every opportunity, every challenge, and that we learn that we can do better in caring for, taking care of ourselves. And when we do that, we become better fathers, we become better partners, we become better co-workers, we become better citizens, and we become better warriors to fight for the things that we really believe matter.
Mm.
So I'm hoping that I I am passing, I'm still in there fighting with you, but I'm also passing the torch to you, to continue to do that divine work and to help men to see that courage isn't this. Here's what courage is. Here's what honor really is. Here's the path of honor that you get to make a choice to walk on.
Mm. I love that. I really love that. And it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ken. And again, I just really admire you. I admire the work you've done. I admire the man that you are in the world. I admire your both compassionate heart and like fierce strength, because I feel like you're really a man who embodies both and gave me permission to be both. And so just really, really grateful for you. Thank you so much. It was an honor to have you at the premiere with us and to share your wisdom with that group there. And it's been an honor today to share with everybody else who's listening. And so just really, really appreciate you and value you.
Thank
I love
you.
you, my friend.
And let's both take care of ourselves. And please, if you're watching, please care lovingly for yourself through the holidays. And let's make 2025, let's reimagine it as one of our best years ever.
And highly recommend you get Ken's book. You can see it right behind him on the shelf there. It's How We Go On, Self-Compassion, Courage, and Gratitude on the Path Forward. And you can get that at kendruck.com. So thank you so much for joining us today,
My
Ken.
brother.